Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the NewOrleans.Football podcast, coming to you from the Better Call BADEAUX podcast studio and presented by Hardhide Ponchatoula Whiskey. We got a great show for you guys. We're going to get into all of the last draft roundup, whatever the must, needs, wants. What should the Saints do at specific spots? Should they trade up for certain players? We got Kevin in studio today, and stay tuned in the show. An announcement on the future of this podcast, the format change, and some of the stuff that we're going to be doing in the very near future. A lot of exciting stuff going on. If you aren't signed up for the website yet, use the code DRAFTSEASON23, NewOrleans.Football. You will save 20% on your first payment, and you definitely want to get that because we're going to have the film reviews, the breakdowns, all the picks, the hows, the whats, the whys behind each selection. So make sure you are locked in for all of that. And our final mock draft coming Thursday before the draft. Hardhide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey is an 86 proof blend of 3-year-old wheat bourbon, American light whiskey, and fresh Ponchatoula strawberries. It is not for the thin-skinned. Look for it in your favorite bars, restaurants, and stores. And if you need legal help with any of the following: car wrecks, offshore injuries, 18-wheeler collisions, Maritime Jones Act, hurricane and storm claims, or maybe even storm claims, you better call BADEAUX at 504-323-7777 or 985-303-7777 for your free consultation and case review. And make sure you check out Firehouse Subs, Veterans Boulevard location. They got a couple more spots coming out soon, so make sure you check them out. Great people do great things for the community. And let's get into the draft show. All right, we got a great show for you guys. A couple of nice surprises. We got Kevin in studio today, and starting next week on May 1st, this podcast is going to go to a 3 days a week format: Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Catch that here on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. During the off season, we will have one members only episode. During the season, we will have 2 members episodes. So count that: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We are essentially becoming your daily podcast, your only listen you need every single day. And the big news of that, we are hiring Brooke Kirchhofer. WWL does a great job on their TV station. She is going to be hosting the show for us. So we got big things popping all around here. So, all right, we are getting into today's show. We got Kevin here.
Wow.
So Kevin in the stew for the first time since the, a year ago. We had 2 chairs set up in my living room against the window blind.
Against the window.
Yeah, just because we had the camera switcher and we could go to the 3-camera setup, and
now we're in the studio.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're now your only listen every day soon.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, it was for the same event too. It's the members only event that time, and I remember just seeing we got Shireen back there running around while we got the podcast going on. We got wires all in front of us. We rigging everything up right before the pod.
Making moves, man.
Yeah,
we didn't have a signature beer then. We now have a signature beer. Check that out, Urban South. So yeah,
man. Citrus Blitz.
Who else got a beer off a podcast? I don't know.
I don't know, man.
I don't know.
It just feels good. It feels good. Yeah. So I finally got to meet Mike too.
I know. I couldn't when I was looking at him at the event. The event was awesome, by the way. Thanks to everyone who came out there. I love seeing everybody in person and reminding that when we're sitting in here talking, that people are really passionate about what we do. But I was looking at Kevin and I was like, there's no way this is the first time I met him. Like, usually it's on that screen, and now it's on my left. So I'm gonna have
now he's sitting here in person. He's sitting here in
in
person in the Better Call BADEAUX podcast studio, and we are presented by Hardhide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey. That is not for the thin-skinned, and we're not a thin-skinned group. So yeah. Kevin definitely isn't. He's about to bust out that chair. So
I don't have a comeback to that. I was trying to think of something clever, and I was like, I guess I am.
Yeah. So what we got?
It's also draft week. On top of all this, this is one of the 3 biggest weeks of the season for what we do, isn't it?
It is, yeah. No, it's draft week. New players coming on the team. That's exciting. It's been a weird lead up to the draft. Normally,
it's been long.
I normally have 3 or 4 dudes that I am extremely passionate about. This year, it just kind of feels like I don't know.
Well, they're picking 29.
Yeah, and what they need, I don't know that they're gonna get. What they want with what they need. Yeah. So it's a weird draft. It's kind of like you got to see how it plays out. The more and more I think about it, like my thought process, I'm like, man, I don't know if they're gonna get what they want. Like I'm looking at Mickey trying to get in his head. Mickey's probably sitting there. I'm like, man, I don't know if So that's I don't know. It
This
just
feels
like a trade up draft.
This feels like the day that they were trying to trade up a couple years ago when they were trying to trade up 20 spots. They were like, 27 sucks.
Yeah.
Can we get to 8?
Yeah.
This might be one of
We
those
don't even know who's going to be there at the time. We just know we want to be in that.
27 is awful.
Right. And then the day of the draft, they went up again.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Yeah. So it probably definitely, if I had to guess, like if they were going to trade up or not, it definitely, just based on historical.
29 is a long time to wait.
That's a long time to
There's
wait.
2 bad things about 29. 1, it's pick 29. And 2, it's 4 hours into a day.
Yeah.
Like, it'd be one thing if they had pick 33 and they were like, all right, at least we get to go first on Saturday. But they're going to be sitting there for a long time on Friday. They're going to be sitting there for a long time Thursday night. So, yeah, I think we would all go, make our bets that they're going to trade up.
They're going to trade up. Yeah, well, that's good because you can go and get some of that Citrus Blitz beer from NewOrleans.Football after they
Probably
moved.
not. Actually, pace yourself. Yeah, they go 29th. Don't forget.
Yeah,
to
no, they're going to
stick
trade
around.
up, and then you're going to have the rest of the first round to write about it. So. Which was kind of like for leads into the first topic. Like, so if they trade up, right? If they trade up for a player, which we probably say there's a likelihood that they may happen. Do you think it's like the move that they took when they were already up last year when they went to get Olave a few spots, or you think it's going to be a move kind of like they were trying to do with Patrick Surtain in Horn that year when they ended up getting I think a Debo and they were trying to go like really far into the top 10. So like what type of trade up, if they do you see them making? Is it an aggressive one or is it like, hey, let's just go up a few spots and get a guy to send the range from which we can make a move?
Yeah, I think they start with the Surtain calls and then they work their
They
way
make
down.
every call.
Yeah, they're going to find out what's going to be available. And look, here's the thing. They make those calls every year, and then we're going to wake up. It's going to be 10 o'clock Thursday morning, and Ian's going to tweet that the Saints are making calls and looking to make a move because that's just what they do. That's part of their process. That Mickey's going to make those calls every single year. But yeah, I think realistically, I shouldn't say that because I don't know. This draft's going to be so dictated by the quarterbacks. And I think what Arizona does is going to kind of control the whole entire board. If they move out at 3, Houston might move out at 2. Now you got people going up for quarterbacks. Now, if those moves don't happen, you might have defensive player. And now the value for trading up for quarterbacks is going to be inflated because teams trying to go up. There's just a premium with that. So it depends. If the quarterbacks go high up, trading the 10 might be cheaper. But if that doesn't play out like that, Arizona stays put and everything's slotted a different way, trading up to 10 might cost a different price. So I think Arizona, just that domino is going to control the whole entire first round. And it's going to play a major part in that trade market.
Yeah,
I've said this a few times. I don't know that this is the Saints thinking, but the state of this team right now does not feel like the one player away, go to the Super Bowl this year, worry about the future later. I feel like there's a little, we have to worry about the future a little bit too. So I feel like I would actually be surprised if they trade a future first rounder in this year's draft for a non-QB.
I think I would be too.
Yeah, like if they were going for a QB, whatever it costs. But for a non-QB, I'd be a little surprised to see them trade a future first rounder. So I think we're looking a lot more. And even I'd be a little surprised to see them package 29 and 40 to move up.
If Jalen Carter wasn't terrifying, that would be a guy that I would be
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
get
it's
him.
possible.
Jalen Carter
yeah.
drops out of the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, sure.
But if he wasn't someone that you're worried about him gaining 9 pounds, the off the field stuff, the does he love football element, that would be a guy that I'd be like, oh, go up and get him because you're trading for a guy that's just going to be impact all the time.
He's all world.
He might, he might end up being just okay. And I'm not
But
giving up
even
a
if it
first. I'm not
was-
giving up a future first for okay.
Even if it was Jalen Carter and his character
Was
intangibles were impeccable, there are a lot of years that I've covered the Saints where I'm like, man, you're one Jalen Carter away. That's exactly what this team is missing. Trade 2 firsts for him.
Yeah, but I think
I see it. I don't want to see 2 firsts for any defensive lineman.
if he
in
was
this
the
draft.
real deal, though, like I'm giving up 2 firsts for an interior pass rusher that's going to get me 8 sacks every year.
Yeah.
And he has that ability if he's locked in. The problem is you don't know
Yeah.
what he's going to be.
Yeah.
And you go through their first round history. There's a lot of guys that I'd be like, well, yeah, give up him plus him to get this much better player.
Yeah.
So
It's tough though. But so what I'm thinking though is I'm thinking first and third. That and I think that gets you
How many spots that gets you? Probably like around
10 spots.
Yeah,
10
okay,
spots.
okay.
You get
That's what I
16,
could see.
17.
That's what I could see. Or any number of things in that range. I think that's a lot more likely. And also when I try to figure out who they would trade up for, I don't think they're going to get Jalen Carter. I don't think they're going to get.
No, you can't go up like that for
Right,
Carter. With,
and
with
I
two
don't
firsts.
think it's Tyree Wilson, right? That's the name of the defensive end. Am I making that up? I feel bad if I'm screwing it up. But and then there's that next tier. There's Lucas Van Ness. There's Marcus Murphy, who both look exactly like the Saints drew up their sizes, dimensions, traits, everything like that.
I think Van Ness is going to go a lot.
I think so too. But what I'm saying is, if the draft plays out a certain way, I could see the Saints liking those guys enough and saying we like them so much better than the second batch of defensive linemen who we'd be considering. That would be my scenario that could see the most likely happening. But of course, it could be a number of things.
Is the Broncos' second round pick they got next year house money for them?
No, because they traded their third for us. Like they don't have a bonus pick. They moved up around. So
yeah, but I mean,
so I don't think it's
still
house
got 2
money
seconds next year. So they may consider it.
Yeah, it's ammo. Everything's ammo.
Next year's second is going to be traded like this year's third, though, in terms of
they're not
value.
They're kind of equal.
If you told me that they could give up 27 and 40 and go up and get a pass rusher that's going to get 8 sacks as a rookie and be a 12 sack guy first year, like I'm doing that all day.
Go
too.
get it, yeah.
And I'd almost even consider next year's first. Like pass rush is just so hard to get, and if you don't make a move and you have an opportunity, you might not have one. Like you have to at some point.
If you know he's Myles Garrett, then of course you give up
no
2 firsts plus more.
No
but
question.
the problem is that it's
that's a building block on defense, and you solve a problem. And there's just no way. There's no way to get a pass rusher unless at some point you make a significant investment or your team is ass. And the Saints aren't willing to go to ass. So I mean, you have to at some point make that investment. I just don't know that there's someone that I feel that comfortable with, convicted about this year, where it's like, hey, go do it, go. But if they felt it, again, it's everything that we said. Just be right. Just be right. Just be right.
That's the main thing.
Yeah,
that's the main thing. So
don't be Davenport. Be right. It's got to be every single year of production. It can't be flashes of production. Be right. You cannot be wrong if you do that.
Yeah, they have to turn the corner on like maybe the last couple of defensive linemen that they draft. So
I'm not there on Lucas Van Ness, and I went to Iowa. I follow the Hawkeyes or whatever. He's not.
I don't think he's not a
Myles
full-time
Garrett.
edge player.
He's not Myles Garrett. He's not a two first.
We're talking about him like 10 to 20.
But I don't think he's a full-time.
But what I'm saying is, it would take 2 firsts to go up to 10 and get Lucas Van Ness.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I would not want to see the Saints do that in this draft.
I could see a scenario where like he's a nickel down inside pass rusher.
No, I would love it if the Saints got Lucas Van Ness. I would not trade 2 firsts for Lucas Van Ness, is what I mean, and that's who we're talking. That's who we're talking about. It's the only defensive lineman.
I personally don't feel that strongly about any of these guys to be like, you cannot do this, because like they could do it and they could be right. Like it's just
right.
If you do it, be right. Like if I would understand the theory of doing it, and it would be okay. So this is the guy that they think can answer it. Now let's see. Like that's just kind of I never feel so strongly about anything like this is the right guy, this is the wrong guy. Like I just can't.
But the problem is there have been some years in the past where I feel like that need is big enough. And you're right. It's so hard to get a pass rusher. The Saints definitely need a pass rusher. But we're going to if we fast forward 12 months from now and we're looking at a Saints team with no first round pick and a big hole at guard, a big hole at running back, a potential hole at receiver, like a potential hole at linebacker, I just feel like this is a time where I'm clutching my future first rounder like pearls more than I have in the past with this team.
And I don't disagree with that, but if they're picking in that 20 range, I'm okay with them having 1 really good answer and a mediocre answer instead of 2 mediocre answers. So if you're making that move and you can get a difference maker,
I would trade 29 and 40. I'm just talking about that future first. That is the one that's off limits.
Even the future first. If you're picking in that 20 to 32 range and you get a good pass rusher by moving up, by packaging them together, and you have an answer there, I'm cool with them having to go out and spend some money on a guard. That's a better investment.
I mean, it's always good to if you know that you're going to get a borderline blue chip player for if you spend 2 first round picks, and every team would do that.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Because 50% is probably the hit rate on these picks anyway. So, and sometimes it's lower, right? You go multiple years where your first round pick isn't landing. So if you know you're going to get a guy, most teams would do that because you're above the hit rate and you're getting a player that you're going to be good with.
Yeah, I'm taking 1 Mike Triplett over 2 Tick Miplets all day. So
Well, I couldn't agree more with that.
Kevin Washington,
but here's the other thing, though.
Anything you do, your stars are always going to make you better, and you can fill out the depth. Like you can get other workers, but if you have one guy that's going in and designing the iPhone, and then you got a bunch of guys that can build it, great. But you need that one guy. So if you get a superstar player,
I agree, and that's always been their philosophy.
There's only one guy in this draft that
The problem
is
is
remotely close to that, and that's Carter. And
well, here's the thing: you trade 29 and a future first, you get to about 15 or 14.
if Carter gets into 15,
what was the Marcus Davenport trade? 27 and a future first to get to 14.
Yeah.
Like they're not getting to 3 with a future first. So we're just not talking about a guy who. I don't think the 12th pick in this year's draft is worth 2 firsts.
Sometimes though, like it's totally possible if the quarterbacks go early and there's kind of this run, because I don't think anybody really loves the quality of the first round grades in this draft. Like the draft where Ireland went up to get Deion Jordan, horrible move. I mean, backfired on him.
But he only had to pay a third for that. Luckily, the prices reflected that.
Yeah, it was incredibly cheap. So sometimes it is a little bit cheaper than expected.
Specific.
But I don't necessarily, again, just to clarify, we're talking about like the theory in general. I don't necessarily see a player that I'm like, they got to go get him. That's the difference maker. But look, if they
let's get out of hypothetical Ireland conversation and get it. Like if Carter falls to 15 and they move up and get him and they spend an extra first round pick to move up.
I wouldn't like it based on what I'm saying. But
look, this stuff off the field, like I don't know enough about him.
But Saints, if the Saints move and get him, I would guess that they have. I mean, I don't think
I agree.
they're a locker room team guy, right? So I would kind of trust. I would trust that they.
Well, I can't say that because they they traded 2 firsts to go up for a guy that everybody said was a little bit weird off the field.
But that's a totally different.
But it was worries about how much he loved football. And Jalen Carter right now,
is it football with him?
Everybody is worried about how much he loves football.
Okay,
he gained weight. He can't stay in shape. He couldn't make it through his pro day. Like there are.
So you wouldn't like the move. If
I'm
they
saying I would be
Carter.
uncomfortable with it, and I'd have to see. Like the off field with him makes me a little bit uncomfortable. But if he's there at 15, the tape says go get him.
But
there are things that could backfire on that. I think. For sure.
Yeah.
That's again. So here we're talking in theory, and we're not talking about a specific player. You try to put Jalen Carter's name on it because you're trying to say top 5 talent.
Well, that's the only type of talent. That's the only type of player.
Either way, if Jalen Carter is available at 15, it's for a reason. I don't want to pay 2 firsts for anybody who will be available at like the 15th player in this year's draft, especially. Is not
Jalen Carter is not the 15th player in this, and he's
but
like the third, fourth, or fifth.
If he is, it's for a reason, and that's why I don't want to pay 2 firsts.
I mean, Larry Thompson was the 13th or whatever, right? Before Sheldon Rankin.
And obviously, sometimes that works out. Sometimes that works out.
I think Sean wanted the Thompson at the time or something.
The only thing I would want to pay 2 firsts for is a sure thing, and I don't.
There's no such thing as a sure thing in the NFL draft, though. It's a
There's been a few. You mentioned Myles Garrett.
Andrew Luck wasn't a sure thing because he retired early. He was the most sure thing in years.
Yeah. But you mentioned Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett was a sure thing who turned out like. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about would you trade 2 firsts? Would you trade 2 firsts to get to 12 or 13? And to me, there's too much, and we've seen it too much. We've seen too much. I mean, that's where they took Marcus Davenport at 14. That it would be a repeat of that year, and that year. I believe they were 1 player away, and they were a pass rusher away, and that was the year that pass rusher prices exploded, and I understood the move, and even then I felt uncomfortable about it. I'm saying that now, the 2023 Saints, I feel twice as uncomfortable about doing it as I would have even in 2018.
What do we got next?
So
what do we got next? We've been on this one long enough. Let's move on. Let's spin on to the next one.
So when you're talking about, players in this draft that may go, every draft is different, right? We was just talking about how there's some players that you like if a quarterback goes for before. Like if you're Saints fans, what are the positions? And a side note, we did have a conversation a few weeks ago about what position, should we be comfortable with them just not drafting? We said maybe just center. Everything else is fair game, right? But if you're a Saint fan and you're watching this draft, what positions do you want to see go before the Saints pick maybe, quarterback is an obvious one. But what positions do you want to see jump off the board?
We all want to see Hendon Hooker go ahead, right?
Last year you saw a wide receiver go off the board and you was like, oh crap, right? You get anxiety because I think Garrett Wilson went off the board, the kid from UCLA went off the board to the Falcons, and then you start to think about, okay, well, Olave's the top guy on the board, so you don't want another team to take a wide receiver.
Really good point.
So
what's that position?
I want the running backs to go, Bijan and Gibbs. I want Gibbs to go before the Saints because that just pushes another player down. You can get that value later. I don't want to go O-line in the first, but I kind of want the O-line to stay there as the backup option. So I think that Safeties, I think, can go early. I'd be okay with Brian Burns there, but if he goes before that, pushes down probably a pass rusher of some
Brian
sort.
Branch.
Brian Branch, sorry, yeah, Brian Branch, BB.
I'll take Brian Burns too.
Yeah,
though.
yeah, that's a good
How about
pickup.
let's trade for Brian Burns? Then we got the defensive end thing solved. Yeah.
Cornerbacks, I would like to see them go before the Saints pick.
Linebacker.
Yeah, linebackers can go. I don't think any will go in the first round that high. Maybe,
But that would be a good,
that would be a good position.
One went,
Yeah.
for sure. Basically anything that's not a D line.
What about
man.
O-line?
Yeah, I mean, I
Nick
want
mentioned that,
I want that to be the backup option. So I think anything but D line, O line. I want
anything
D line,
but
O line there.
Okay.
I would be okay with Johnston as the wide receiver, but I think ideally you can get a vet, maybe sign one, trade for one at that position afterwards. So I would be okay with all the wide receivers
Maybe
going
we'll get
before.
Renfro or something.
Yeah, get them in the trenches.
So yeah, basically, if you're watching this draft and you want it to play out in the Saints' favor, you just want anything but defensive linemen to go. Honestly, because everything else is like tied for a number 2 need for the Saints. But I'll say one that's a little different than Nick. I'm not going to blend the whole offensive line together. There's 4, 5, or 6 offensive tackles that could go before the Saints.
Yeah.
I think offensive tackle would put the Saints in a quandary. I like, in theory, if you draft an offensive tackle in round 1, he's not playing this year. Like, you don't have a spot for him unless Penning or Ramczyk gets hurt. Now, Penning or Ramczyk could get hurt. And then if you draft an offensive tackle in round 1, you're probably cutting Ryan Ramczyk next offseason.
Can you slot Penning to guard?
No, you don't do that. So I think it'd be great if 5 offensive tackles went before the Saints, just so they're not in a position where they're like,
OTs,
the highest, the highest ranked player on our, like, I put offensive tackle pretty close to center when we had that discussion. Like, of course, you take a left tackle, and this is a good draft for offensive tackles. I think 6 might go in the first round. But I don't think that's a great fit for the Saints. It might be their best player available, but you don't have an immediate spot for them. So I think that I would like the draft to play out to where the Saints are like, good. We don't have to choose. Do we take the offensive tackle even though that's not our biggest need?
If it goes to hell, yeah. Like if Torrance is sitting there, that's the one.
Now guard, Torrance at guard.
Yeah, that's it. Like if it goes to hell, like if they take him, I'm okay with everything that happens. Yeah. So OTs go, get him out of there.
Yeah,
push him up.
With any other positions, tight end.
No, tight end would be good. Like I said, when we had that discussion, I think perfect scenario is your highest ranked player is a defensive lineman. Absolutely. And then I'd say that we could probably name 6 or 7 positions. Safety. I don't love the idea of them taking a corner in round 1, but at least you can find somewhere to put them. But safety, yeah. Tight end, yeah. Running back, yeah. Guard, yeah. Linebacker, yeah. What do we mean? Receiver, yeah. I mean, if that's their by far and away highest ranked player on the board, there's room for all those guys.
I think if an offensive tackle is the highest ranked player on the board and he stands above everybody else, I think they just have to take him.
I know, but that's not the perfect scenario.
It's not.
That doesn't mean
Ryan Ramczyk wasn't the perfect scenario in 17 neither, right?
Exactly.
I mean, obviously Streif was at the end, right, when you took him, but I mean, Ramczyk.
But that's the thing is
stay on the field.
That means Ryan Ramczyk is now playing his final year with the Saints.
Well, Ramczyk, I mean. It's an availability thing too, right? He's a guy that you maybe want to have some backup behind because he may miss a game a game here or there. So not rehashing the first question at all, but is this a draft where they have to have more shots at it, right? And so in typical drafts with the Saints, yesterday at the members only event, we were joking about them trading, half their draft for Adam Troutman. Yeah. Right, which is fun. So and they did that because at the state of the roster at the time was, they basically maybe only had a few spots. They had depth. They had maybe one of the arguably the most talented roster in the league, and so they approached the draft that way. Yeah. So coming into this draft, and we've spoken about, hey, this is a team that needs to start filling out some of the depth things. They need to think about the next generation of players who are going to be the Saints and carry this team forward. So is this a draft where, I'll use the word starting just because they typically have traded up and given up picks to move up. But is this a draft where they should start thinking about making more picks?
I think those are two different conversations. I think, obviously I'm sitting here repeating over and over again in that first question that we were talking about that I'm scared to death to trade a future first now. But I do not feel that way about picks in general. Okay. I don't think you need to have 11 picks in the draft. I don't think you need to have 8 picks in the draft. I don't think you need to have 2 4th rounders, 2 5th rounders, 2 6th rounders. The Saints have proven that to me, and I believe them. if they trade their entire Saturday for one player, I trust that they will sign undrafted rookies who'll make a difference. I trust that they'll find guys cut from other teams. I trust that they'll find a veteran who'll make the roster. And this is just because every single year with this team, we go to project our 53-man roster in August. And I'm always like, man, I'd love to find a spot for Kirk Merritt. Man, I'd love to find a spot for this fourth-year offensive lineman who's really Nick Martin. You know what I mean? And I'm like,
there may not be a problem this year.
But I just don't. Yeah. So what I'm saying is, if you only get 6 rookies that you love, and then Nick Martin becomes your 8th offensive
is a big
lineman.
draft for the Saints, though. That's almost every pick for them. Yeah,
but But and that means Rashid Shaheed makes your team, and a veteran offensive lineman makes your team, and an undrafted running back makes your team.
Yeah.
I trust the Saints to find a good 53-man roster and 8-man practice squad without them all having to be drafted. So I will never mind an Adam Troutman type of trade.
Okay.
Yeah, there's nothing. I just think in general, there's nothing more overvalued than draft picks. I think people place a premium on them. And I think you can get so much just trading a draft pick for a vet if you can afford the contract. I get the idea of it, but they're always, it's just perfect hope. No one ever injects in like, oh, wait, they only hit on 37% of their second round picks and that. Like it's a second round pick at 40. They're going to get this guy that hit in the second round and he's cheap, and they probably aren't. So I don't know. I think you just have to draft well. Whatever your strategy is, you have to have a good hit rate. It can't be 18 where you're cutting half your draft if you're going with a small class. You got to hit. If you're going to go small, you got to get Eric McCoy and CJ GJ. Like that's kind of what you got to do. And that's just whatever you do. If you make a ton of picks, Belichick makes more picks than anybody, and they suck at drafting. They miss so much on the draft. And look, they get some hits. I'm not saying that, but there are just so many misses within their draft classes every year, and they take the volume approach because they think scouting's extremely flawed. Scouting is extremely flawed, but if you can just do it a little bit than everybody else and you cut down the risk rate and you're targeting the right people. I don't know if targeting Adam Troutman was necessarily the right move, but he's played and had a role.
Thought that was a great pick. Unless he has his Caden Ellis 4th year, I'm going to be wrong on him.
And I think I think it's a difficulty with tight ends too.
Yeah.
Like if you aren't getting one in the first or second, the odds of them probably becoming and there's outlied Darren Waller and all that stuff, but I just think whatever they do, they got to hit. I mean, that's just really if you don't draft well, you're.
I believe in the concept of the volume approach. Obviously, I mean it makes perfect sense. But the only problem with people who subscribe to the volume approaches is I don't think they're giving enough credit to the fact that the volume doesn't have to come from the draft. The Saints are going to have 90 players in camp, just like every other team in the NFL.
Like anything in the world.
Kevin White, who's been on 8 NFL teams, could hit as much as any fourth-round pick could.
Like anything in the world, I think the blend of both things is probably true. Like if you're just all volume and you never love anyone you're scouting, do you have the right scouts? At some point, you have to love a player.
Because there are good players back there.
Yeah.
I mean, I think when I think about like this draft, I think one like the 2016 draft would be ideal, right? You got Sheldon Rankins in that draft. You got Michael Thomas, Von Bell, and David Onyemata.
I would they get a better first-round pick.
Obviously, but you would take Sheldon Rankins if you get a Mike Thomas, a Von Bell, and a David Onyemata behind it, right? Like the Pete Warner in the.
Did they trade up for both Onyemata and Bell that year, or just Onyemata too?
I would need to look that up.
It might have been just Onyemata.
It might have been just look. I agree. If the floor on your first round pick is a solid 5-year contributor, that's not
right, and that's the type of because it's easy to say, hey, they need to do 2000s, 6. So that draft over again 6.
You're right though,
or the 2017 draft, and those are rare.
Yeah, give me 4 guys.
Just give me a David, and they don't have to be all pro guys, but you need guys that are going to be starters for your team over the course of a long term, and that's how I think. That's what I think needs to come with this draft. Just David Onyemata, just guys along that range. Von Bell was a good player for this team, right? And he's still in the league being a good player. So just guys like that are going to be able to be. They're going to contribute for you. And you're going to get 4 years of a guy where you're not having to pay him, this large salary, because that's the value of draft picks. And I agree with you, Nick. Draft picks are overvalued until you hit on one. I mean, and then they're undervalued because it becomes the best asset that you have on your team.
The charge rate though, like the value you get is for the assumption that it's a hit every single time. Nobody pays for the downside; they pay for the upside. So, like you could.
I mean, a draft pick is measured after it's made, not before it's made. Yeah, really, right? Yeah.
So but a team completely just eschewed draft picks and won the Super Bowl off that strategy. And look, is it a long-term dynasty building strategy? No, absolutely not. Like you have to draft players, you have to get cheap labor in and all that stuff, but. if it's, in a the right scenario, I think you can just leverage the hell out of that because people will just overpay for those picks almost every single time.
Okay, yeah.
I'd like to point out too that Kevin very graciously said, "I'm not going to put an unrealistic expectation on the draft and say it has to be the 2017 draft. You just have to draft one of the greatest receivers in NFL history in round 2. That's all I need."
He was in there, man. But the bar is higher in these parts, man. The bar is higher in these parts. So, all right. So let's get into. Okay, so one more question. So, in the last members only pod, we did a tier ranking, right?
Yeah.
And we did S tier, which is the highest, A, B, C, D, and F. What
People
tier,
should sign up for the membership
and listen to that podcast
just for the explanation on
Of
what an
what it
S tier
was.
is
Yeah.
alone.
What tier do you think this draft needs to fall in? If you have to pick up based on that scale that we used before, I'd say a B. A good B, a good A or B would
it
be
needs
good.
to fall in the S.
Well, I mean, all of them.
I'll take an
right?
A. I'll take an
I'll
A.
take an A
No,
or
I
B.
think it needs to be an A. I think it needs
Okay,
to
you
be
think
an
it
A. I
needs
mean,
to be
of
an
course,
A.
I'm fine with a B. Like,
So was
it can't be a
16? Was
disaster.
16?
It
Was the
can't be
Mike
a
Thomas
mess.
draft an A or B?
A.
Okay, that's an A draft.
The draft where you drafted Mike Thomas
I mean,
in round
but you had
2.
a first rounder who you didn't re-sign either, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and
no.
Daniel Pascal.
That was
in
an
that
A.
draft.
No, that was a
yeah.
great draft. That's an A draft. What
I
you
agree.
described is an A
That's an
draft,
A draft.
and I agree. It counts as an A draft if you get 4 players, 1 superstar, 3 contributors. I'll take 1 superstar and 3 contributors. Yeah, but a B is probably
That Mike draft's an S, man. You
what
got a
is-
generational talent? Like I know it went
yeah,
sideways,
exactly,
but
exactly, exactly.
Of one bit, I mean-
if 2017 and 2006 are S tiers, then
But then
2016
what is 2017? Yeah, then
That's an S.
2017
Yeah,
and 16
yeah,
can't be in
yeah,
the same
yeah.
tier though, right? One is clearly better
Yeah.
than the other.
I don't know. man.
S
You got-
minus. Mike Thomas is
Because
an S minus.
Mike was good. Mike was great for the
Yeah.
Saints, but I mean,
Right.
you got Marshawn, Alvin.
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
just saying if Mike never got hurt, like the draft where the Giants got Lawrence Taylor is the greatest draft of all time. Like
Just
I don't
'cause you
get,
got
I
Lawrence
can't
Taylor.
name one other player they took. And if Mike is the best receiver of his
Yeah,
generation,
of
and I
course,
think
of
he
course,
was
of
talent wise, that's up there, man.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I mean,
you'll take 1 Mike
any
Thomas.
draft list
The
has-
draft is
and
an
all
S if you
misses,
get
yeah.
1 player.
Yeah.
exactly.
any all-time great draft
Exactly.
in NFL history has the 2017 draft on it. I think it's just a clear step above the 16.
like if you get one of them dudes that's top 3 at their position, like 3 years down the road, you would say I'd trade every player in my draft for that.
So if
guy.
you get a
like
Pro Bowl safety and everybody else is bad, then it's a good draft.
Ed Reed, yeah,
Well, that's a Hall of Fame.
But
Mike
that's-
Thomas
that-
is not Hall of Fame.
but he was,
But he isn't though.
but he was.
But he. But,
Okay, but yeah.
But yeah. I mean,
I'd make that pick every time. Yeah.
You make the pick every time.
And that
yeah,
makes
yeah.
it- makes
But I
it
do
a
So
good
think-
I'm trying to think about a grade on the.
You told me the Saints get 1 All-Pro in this draft class. That's as good as it. That's an S tier is elite scenario.
Tell
You
me
get
who
that
I'm-
one guy.
Tell me who I'm forgetting in the 2021 draft. Peyton Turner round 1, Pete Werner round 2, Paulson Adebo round 3. Was there anybody else of note on day 2? Troutman was a year earlier. So Peyton Turner, the jury is still out. He could be a total bust, or hopefully he's a contributor. Paulson Adebo, the jury's kind of still out if he ever gets his starting job back. Pete Werner looks like a hit. Is that draft good enough? Or it's got to be better than that. It's got to be better.
Pete
than
Werner.
that,
That's the worst. That's a bad scenario for the team. Pete Werner and
and
then Adebo.
Turner
He
and
played a
Adebo.
good rookie year, and then they drafted.
That was close. That was close to a B draft.
They drafted his replacement the next
Turner.
year, though.
Turner. We need to find
That's
out
a
more.
C.
Yeah.
That's a C minus.
It depends. It all
almost.
depends on Turner. Yeah.
I don't know what the criteria is. Like if
Yeah.
you just get someone that changes the fortunes of your team at a position, that's
Yeah.
But they can't
is that
have
an
that
A?
draft
Is that a
again.
B?
Yeah.
Is that a C? I
That
don't know what
draft's
it is.
not- no.
Like
That draft was close, but it all depends on Turner being something.
Yeah. Okay. So Mike, we're gonna this is a good idea that Mike had for me for this pod. So we're gonna say based on this draft, we're gonna say what positions are must need and nice to have. All right. So we separated out defensive end and defensive tackle. Right. I think that makes sense for conversation purposes. So start with defensive tackle, must need, or it's a must have, nice to have, or a need. How
Yeah, if we had not separated out tackle and end, defensive line is a must. A must. Like the Saints can't get out of Friday without a defensive lineman. Do they need an end and a tackle? Probably. I think I'm gonna end up putting both of them at must. I think a 3 technique who can either rush the passer or disrupt the pass rush enough to make the passer get sacked by the ends is an absolute must for this team. And I don't see it waiting in free agency either. for a May
defensive
1st
end
signing.
could be free agency though.
Defensive end, you might be able to sign
but then
someone
this
May
is
1st.
defensive end. We're talking DE right now. So
My 3 technique who helps this pass rush is
He's
still
not
a
in free
screaming
agency.
must for
he's
me.
not in free agency.
Yeah.
Now, who do they get it? That's much harder said than done. We've tried a lot of mock drafts, and I
No,
think
at
Brian.
29,
I think
no. The
I
answer's
think
no. They
I
aren't gonna
think
get it at
Brian
29.
Brzee from Clemson
Clemson.
would be nice. I like Kalijah Cansey more than I think the Saints probably do. Maybe at 29 or 40. Keon White, you can
What
move
if
from
they don't
end
just
to
like none
tackle,
of the guys, though?
and then if you're doing it in the 3rd round, you haven't filled the need. So
don't think
I'm
you
worried
fill-
about filling it.
I don't think you feel the need at 29 or 40.
Yeah, I know.
What
I'm
if they don't
worried
like none of the guys though? I mean,
that's the problem.
then you just can't draft them.
But you
right?
have to add a body. The body doesn't exist on the roster right now.
But like you just said, the draft. isn't the
I
only
don't
way.
think the guy who starts at 3 technique is currently on the roster. I really don't. I mean, it could be
I could see a scenario.
Nathan
where-
Shepard,
I could see a
but I
scenario
want
where
him
the
coming off
rookie-
the bench.
I could see a scenario with the 2 DTs that they signed, the 2 starters.
I think it's
I think it's
extremely
possible.
Yeah.
I think it's possible.
think it's
Those are
extreme.
2 guys.
I don't think that you're getting a difference maker at 29. I just
No,
don't.
no,
I
I
don't
don't
like
know.
it. And so I mean,
But even if Nathan Shepard is your starter, that he's going to play 40 snaps. You need
more bodies.
There is somebody not on the roster yet that is going to play a huge role in this
I'm
team
more
at
worried
that
about.
position.
I'm honestly more worried about N than DT.
All right, well, let's go right into it. A must.
I mean, I feel like
So you
it is.
put. So you put.
Draft must. Draft must.
One of the 2 is a must at
Yeah.
some point. But
Yeah.
but I'm not forcing it to fill it because I don't. If you're at 29 and you're like, damn, this guy probably ain't going to be any good, but we got to get one. Like,
Yeah,
that's-
exactly.
You can't do that.
That's what I'm saying.
do
You can't
that.
force
do
that pick.
Yeah.
And if they don't like neither one of them, that's when I'm
And then
just.
you can't be like, we didn't get it at 29, so damn it, we got
Let
to
me
do
get
it
it
at 40.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
Yeah.
I think it's extremely possible that there's just they don't. That's why I like the trade up scenario. That's the
Yeah.
only way you get
the
someone where
one-
you're like, well, yeah, okay, maybe he could get
Yeah.
7 sacks this year. 7 sacks on that defensive line right now, like would be massive.
And you lost Caden Ellis too, which he was playing linebacker, but he lost all those sacks too, and you didn't replace
your
those.
second best draft pass rusher.
I sort of feel okay about replicating some of that because some of it's scheme
Schematic.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they just don't have anyone that I'm looking at outside of Cam where I'm like, he's gonna win a one-on-one and get a sack on first down when they surprise you with pass. Or, like there just isn't that. You can probably find way like DeMario, if they call him on more of those blitzes than they did last year, he was
doing
been a
that
good-
before.
Yeah,
Yeah, he was
and
doing
then
that before.
Caden was a killer on
Yeah.
him. So there's ways to do it,
Yeah.
but man, like
Zach
you
Bond
got-
season.
you
Zach
gotta-
Bond season.
Yeah. You got
7 sacks for Zach Bond.
That
you
Over
gotta get
preseason
under.
someone
game
that
was
can win off
unreal.
the edge. Yeah, you got to get someone that can beat a double team at some point.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
they just don't have it.
And that's
No,
what I
look,
think
yeah.
that's my fear of the pick at 29 because the guy, it's very likely that the guy that you need at that position at the level that you said that they need to get someone there, that guy's not going to be available.
No.
And that
But what
may,
they could do at defensive tackle is, and again, David Onyemata is probably one of the best 4th-round picks any team has ever made at defensive tackle. But you could find a guy at defensive tackle who's good for 25 snaps. I actually would be pretty shocked if they come out of this position without adding a defensive tackle. That could be actually one of those guys that is not a 1st or 2nd rounder, and now he's coming off the bench and he's contributing. But yeah, game changer defensive tackle. I don't see it in this draft.
I mean,
But-
the 3 tech you're drafting at 29 is probably going to get 1.5 sacks. Like, that's just reality. It's
yeah.
just reality.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I
Yeah.
mean, it probably is Shepard. Like, Shepard probably is your best bet unless you move up the board because that just doesn't.
he's not
the
there.
interior
Unless
pass-
you hit on the guy like a
interior-
Mike Thomas in the 2nd round, you get
Interior
lucky.
pass
but
rush is just so insanely valued. And most guys in the league are like a 4-sack guy. Like, that's a good pass rusher at 3 tech. Like, so, yeah.
and the
I
best
mean,
interior rusher in the league was only dropped because Chris Jones, Aaron Donald, but he only dropped because there was some off the field stuff
Yeah.
because his talent was way above
Yeah.
Jalen Carter type situation, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, with DE and
they
D,
exist. Like, you could go through and find some guys. But, yeah, I mean.
it ain't just sitting
yes,
there. Yeah,
It's
right.
because nobody realized
Everybody else passed on him too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, it was like the consensus. So the team that picked him in the 4th and he was good got lucky, right? Essentially, well, lucky relative to the rest of the league. Yeah. With D and DT must need, I kind of treat that similar to how we treated the Pete Carmichael thing on the tier thing. Is relative to something else, right? And so Pete grade went from a lower grade to a higher grade because he helped get Derek Hart, right, in our tier podcast. So with D and D tackle, if you got a defensive tackle, then defensive end maybe goes from a must-have to a need, right? Versus if you, in isolation, you need it for sure, right? So basically, pass rusher is the need right here. And if you get somebody else in the position,
one or the other,
then the other one becomes a little bit more. But
or the other is not only a must; it's the biggest must I can remember for this team in.
If you get one,
since the Marcus Davenport trade year, probably.
And my bar here is like 5 sacks. Just get someone that can get 5 sacks somewhere on the position. Look, ideally, like I like interior pass rush more than on that. Like, and I think I'm more scared of the interior, but I don't see the answer. Like part of my thought process is
barren.
I almost want them to take and they're not going to do it because they don't draft like this. But I would just, and this player would fit the mold, but I just take the Aldon Smith approach. Where the first year, the only thing that dude did was pass rush. They didn't ask Aldon Smith to do anything else. Yeah. They just drafted a pass rusher, and that was the only thing he had to worry about. Just that's your only goal this season. We're not trying to develop you into a run defender or anything, just because they need a pass rusher so bad. And the guys, this isn't a pass rusher draft that, it's just going to be hard to get one, like Nick said. So next position, tight end. Where would we rank tight end on that list?
Want, but this is want, which is the third level. Must need want. But I'm going to cheat again here too and say I want one pass catcher, receiver or tight end. So
you're going to kind of group that in. You're going to group that with a slot wide receiver.
Even then, though, if somehow this draft plays out and they don't draft a wide receiver or a tight end, and then they add a slot receiver, like I keep saying Jarvis Landry, I'm not giving up. But I'll just say one. I'll say one, but it could come as early as first round. It's something this team could certainly use. One more pass catcher.
Tight end. Yeah, I think at 29 or 40 at that point, like later in the draft, I don't think you're drafting someone that makes a difference as a pass catcher. You can get a blocker later on. They got a blocker that they drafted in the third round. So they need someone that can make plays. So yeah, early in the draft, I prioritize it. And then I think as the draft goes on, it just kind of lowers for me.
Yeah, like their depth. Like, there's tons of room to upgrade.
It's a nice.
There's tons of room to upgrade. But if you told me the 4 that are making your roster are Adam Troutman, Jawan Johnson, Taysom Hill, Lucas Kroll, who actually showed a few things and hung around, like you're not. But they got to get past you can field a team.
They got to get past the Lucas Kroll guys type at tight end era on this team. I think they got to get somebody there. What's the floor?
But then they sign a Nick Van Nett. They sign a JP Holtz.
Yeah, they got to get away from there. I think they got to get a guy there.
But you only get an upgrade at 29 or 40.
What's the floor on this defense as it is today?
The floor?
Yeah, as it is today, without the pass rusher that we're talking about. They need, like, if they walk out there and play this season with the defense they have right now, what do you think the floor is on the
15?
15. What do you think it? All right, and what do you maybe expect it to be?
Look, they finished like top 5 and everything last year, and I don't think it was a top 5 defense.
I think they could be.
Visually, it didn't look like one to me. You didn't have turnovers or anything like that. That's got to change. You didn't have easy sacks. That's got to change. We saw top 5 defenses. Last year's defense did not look the same.
At the end, they were better though, right?
Yeah, at the end they got better, but it wasn't consistent. It wasn't suffocating. Right. It felt like there were a lot of games you'd look and you'd be like, wait a minute, like these are the numbers right now, because there weren't like game.
I think it was because they didn't dominate the run though. They got ran on, and I think it made the defense feel like
they didn't dominate the run. They didn't have good pass rush, and they didn't get turnovers, but somehow they were a top 5 defense.
So they got no turnovers last year. We never saw anything like that.
Yeah. And so that's the root of the question, right? Last year, I thought they played good defense at the end. They were not the dominant defense they were, right? But there was a lot of teams in the playoff that would have taken the Saints defense, right? And they didn't have a pass rush.
Not consistently.
Well, they did. I mean,
they ended up with good sack numbers, but
but they game when you're watching the game, game to game, the pass rush was wildly inconsistent, right? Davenport didn't play.
Secondary got really good in the second half of the season. They carried the team in the second half of the season.
Exactly.
Linebacker play was pretty good throughout the year. First Werner, second Ellis. But yeah, they scratched it together. That was a little bit of a testament to DA. It was probably the thing he did best.
So is there a case to be made where
I think their defense right now, what ceiling, floor, whatever you want to call it, I feel like it's the same defense we saw last year, which was a flawed but solid defense. There's room for it to get better in a lot of areas.
It's a defense that can win a Super Bowl with the right offense on it.
No, they don't, because they don't have that. They don't have the 2011 Saints.
But I mean, there are worse defenses that have won. There are way worse defenses that have gotten really deep into the playoffs than the one that the Saints have.
But we're talking about a generation of the Saints where it's been their defense is elite. And
but typically defenses don't stay good that long though. I mean, the Legion of Boom had a 4 or 5 year run, and then And the Saints defense
If
is kind of
the Saints defense was elite in 1920, it's not elite right now.
I don't think you're winning a Super Bowl because
you're not winning a Super Bowl because of them. And at the current state of the offense, you're not winning a Super Bowl because of this offense, right?
Well, that goes to the thing. I mean, and so that goes into the question I want to bring up. I don't see a defensive. I mean, the draft can play out high, can play out right, but 29 is hard to find a guy. Like we were just saying, like, is there a case to be made? I mean, it's an offensive league. Do you just give Carr more weapons, right? I mean, is it a case where you say, hey, look, the defense, we're middle of the pack. You know, we give you. I mean, it's an offensive league. They're pass interference. They want you to score more points. Like, do we take the approach that the winning teams were actually taking and load up on offensive weapons and go a different route?
Yeah, I mean, if that's where the elite player is. I mean, if you tell me they're going to draft TCU receiver Quentin Johnson on Friday, we could list our needs and rank. That'd probably get me more excited than any other player they would take at that spot. I'd be like, let's go. I want to watch this. Quentin Johnson, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed,
and that's what I'm
Derek
saying. Like,
Carr.
just load up on offense, right?
Give me so it's about the player. It's about the player. The only thing when we're saying must and needs and wants is
it is true.
Then you need to go out and sign 2 more defensive linemen because you don't even have like the meeting room. You can't show up and have your first defensive line meeting yet. You need more players.
you need one more DT and you can field a team. I mean, you got you got Granderson, you got Passenger, you got Cam Jordan,
Peyton Turner.
You got Peyton. You got 4 defensive end. You got 3 defensive tackles on the roster. I think that are probably in the rotation right now. Roach and the 2 guys you signed. So. Yeah, I mean they.
But you're right. You're right. I mean, if the elite player is Dalton Kincaid at tight end, or
look, I'm not conceding
Jahmyr Gibbs at running back.
That if it's all things are equal, that it's better to go offense, right?
No, it's not better to go offense. But you're allowed to. You're allowed to if
I'm
that's
not conceding on that.
If that's the player,
if the path is better offensively, obviously you take the offensive path. You can be better that way, but you can't. You aren't going to tell me that it's better for them to get a tight end right now than a pass rusher.
I don't think because it's a bigger need. Yeah, it's a bigger need for the team. But I mean, like I said, the draft, there's 28 other teams. There's 28 other decisions before you, right? And so when you get there, then you got to take what you got. Right? Exactly. Right. Running back.
At what?
Must, need, or want in the draft. The draft.
I think it's overall it's a must. Yeah, I think it's an absolute must. You can't go into the season with just Jamal Williams if Alvin's suspended, and that's like who is your next running back? That's not a viable option for me. I think you have to get one. And I think it's just way more intelligent to get a young running back that can be your guy you aren't paying for long term. I'd rather spend $935,000 on him than $4 million on a guy that's average, and you get an average guy coming in that has upside. So definitely, I would definitely much rather they go younger there. I think it's something that they should try to make happen, and I think you can make it happen.
Yeah, technically, I guess I would have to rank it as a need and not a must because if somehow they miss in the draft, they're gonna field a team this year, and Jamal Williams can be your lead guy while
that's
suspended.
Then the idea of a must doesn't exist because you could literally just go out and get a body anyway.
Right, but I have one at like no. But what I'm saying is, if Jamal Williams is my lead back, and then Mark Ingram comes back for the time that Alvin suspended, or you pick up there's so many of them on the street or whatever. It's a position where I'm okay with the replacement level player that I can find. But the reason that I think it's a must in the draft is because I think if you do draft one in round 2, 3, or 4, I think you legitimately might find your long-term replacement for Alvin Kamara, which is also a long-term need.
Even
for
to
this
the other
team.
point, like if you're just going all replacement level players, you have the same issue you had last year because you didn't invest in the position. Yeah. And I think that was a massive.
Well, they added Jamal Williams though. That's a big upgrade.
But Alvin's going to be gone probably.
So
you have to subtract.
For
your season could be effed by the time he comes back. If you,
I'll let Jamal Williams start 4 or 5 games for me, and not feel like I'm going to lose. I mean,
I think he's a starting NFL running back.
He is, but so is Alvin.
Yeah,
and they had just Alvin last year, and they had replacement level.
But the quarterback, I mean, they had no Mike Thomas. Everybody was injured. They had no. Yeah, it's a different team, right? I think there's more offensive firepower right now on the team than it was last year, projected. Right, because guys got hurt. You have a new quarterback to where you can absorb a loss of Alvin. But last year, it stood out more because you didn't have any offensive weapons other than Olave was a good pick and Rashid he emerged. But I think you have more room for error this year potentially, right? Because these guys have to be healthy.
Man,
and
I just think that you got to give your quarterback some help in the run game, and if your next guy is someone that averages 2.7 or 3 yards per carry, I think that you're setting yourself up for failure because we just watched it. I think you got to invest in that position to some degree. Like they need someone else. And yeah, look, if you're weak, if you're weak somewhat, we can do that for every position though. If we're like, well, they can go get a bum that could just fill a body and be below average. We do that everywhere. A must doesn't exist then if that's the criteria. Like I think they have to get someone at that position.
So you say it's a must. You say it's a need.
I think it's a must when you factor in the long term. Like Alvin needs to be replaced within a year.
A need is a pretty strong.
No, I know.
It's not like, oh, a need is like irrelevant, right? That's a pretty big hole that you still need to fill.
But like, I'm not going out, and maybe Nick disagrees with me on this. I'm not going out and signing Leonard Fournette or somebody else. Like, I think because I don't have enough room for another running back to play all 17. But if there was a Leonard Fournette level defensive tackle, he'd already be on my team.
Yeah, maybe
that position needs.
This is a completely. It's a different value at the position, though.
Running back is very draft specific because I like the guy who can be my third guy this year and my first guy within a year or two. So I like running back a lot. But if they somehow miss, how do you field a team this year? No, I like Alvin, Jamal, and there are a lot of guys who could be the third running back. On my team.
They just got two guys on the team that were in the bottom third of the league in expected yards per carry. Yeah. I mean, the new guy and the old guy.
It's not great.
But a need isn't insignificant, though. I mean, I feel like we're treating need like the redhead stepchild or something.
But it's high on the list. It's high on the list. We probably both rank it third or fourth.
It's just a semantic thing.
It's just,
I think I say it's a need because I think D-line is higher. And there just has to be a tier. I can't put them in the same tier because I think D-line.
You got one dude. It's a must. You have to get someone else one way or another. You have to get someone else. They got one dude. Like
who's one dude?
They got Jamal.
Which
and
dude
Alvin's going to be suspended.
Alvin is only suspended at most. Alvin is suspended for a third of the season.
But still, you can't just have one running back. No, you need someone else.
It's true.
Yeah, they need a running back.
You have a starting quarterback and no backup. No one will be like that. Well, damn.
I mean, they're going to field a run. I mean, they're just. Again, they're going to field it. They're not going to go out there with Jamal Williams.
You can find that's a position where I have no trouble finding guys. That's like Mark Ingram can play 5 games for me.
That would be a good.
They were screwed there last year trying to find.
I think that would be.
The approach we're arguing for literally failed.
I was struggling with the Mark Ingram thing. I agree, but
that's why I'm just crediting the Jamal Williams move more. If they had not signed Jamal Williams, it'd be number 1, and I'd be like trade up for Bijan Robinson. Jamal Williams just made it slightly less of an emergency push button for me.
Linebacker.
It'd be nice if they got one.
I think I'm the same with linebacker. Mike, you nice on linebacker?
Yeah. It's probably in the top 5 because for the same reason. I think you need one more body this year. You absolutely are going to need one really soon with Demario Davis being one of your top 2 and Demario Davis's age. So
yeah, absolutely. Guard.
It'd be good.
So you put guard as the same as linebacker?
Yeah, it'd be good.
Even with the fact that you got 2 free agents.
Yeah, it'd be good to get one, but like if you don't this year, there's still time on the clock.
Equal to linebacker. The offensive line is so weird to me, man, because I like the top 6. I like Trevor Penny left tackle, Ryan Ramczyk right tackle. My guards are Andrus Peat,
you like the guy in the middle.
My center is Eric McCoy, and James Hurst. When there's injuries, he could be the first one to go in at left tackle. He could fill in for Andrus Peat at left guard. He could fill in for Ramczyk at right tackle.
Right. He's
got some young developmental players. I got. But what if 4 guys are hurt at once? And that's the problem. That's what's happened 2 years in a row. And that's with the current injuries on this offensive line. It's teetering. If you told me you're going to give me 13 games each for the 5 starting offensive linemen, I'd be like, all right, they're going to the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm more worried about the play on the O-line than maybe even a lot of other positions that we consider higher, because I think that's going to elevate what Derek Carr can do for this team more than almost any other position, on the team, basically. I think if you, given his system and how he plays, if the O-line, if they get their job done, they play up, if they stay healthy, that's one big thing. Just and along, I think that changes it. But just getting good play there, and in Saints, they like to draft offensive linemen, right? They've shown in the past they'll take those guys over and over. I mean, most of the offensive
pretty surprising if they get through this whole draft.
I think they've drafted every starter and offensive lineman on this team, right? They've drafted them all. So they draft those guys. So, I would put offensive linemen maybe a little bit higher.
They've drafted 4 of them in the first round, and the other one at pick 48.
Yeah,
all 5 they've drafted.
They
in the
like
top
to
48.
draft from high, right?
Yeah.
And they showing. So I could see just based on how they draft and how they view the offensive line, and it's always been when Sean was the coach that it was like philosophical to have a good offensive line. I would probably put guard maybe higher just because I know that the injury has a history. This system likes a good O-line, and it's a position they're going to be needing next year. So I'll look at that a little bit higher. Last one, safety.
It'd be nice if they got one.
Same. Yeah, I'm probably
kind of the same as every one of these positions that you see. Yeah, safety is probably equal to linebacker and guard, but every one of these positions I think is in play in round 1.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, I mean, like we said at the beginning, center in round 1. Unless they're moving him to guard. I don't like doing that based on their history of moving centers to guard 2 years ago or whatever. But center in round 1 and offensive tackle in round 1 leads to a quandary. Like, do we like that pick? Do we not like that pick? Everything else, including wide receiver that we didn't really get into much, totally in play in round 1.
Yeah. Okay. Last one. Personal question. It's maybe given the last, 5, 6, 7 years, is this the most unpredictable, I don't know what they're going to do draft? I can't get a feel. Like, as guys that cover the team,
no,
do you feel like you have less of a feel what they're going to do, or you feel like it's just
No,
it's
I feel
regular?
like what they need to do is so obvious that they're going to try to. I feel like it's one of the more predictable. It's only unpredictable because I think where they pick, where they're going to execute their plan. But I think their needs are just so clear. Like, they have to get better on defensive line. They have to get a running back. They have to try to address some of the stuff on the future of the offensive line. Like, I know exactly what they're
But last year
thinking.
we knew like Olave was. I mean, I think we all kind of like.
Well, it was a targeted approach.
Yeah. So this year, like, there's
this
no
is
guy.
like the 2 previous years. The year they drafted Cesar Ruiz 24th, the year they drafted Peyton Turner, was that also
when
29th, 28th? We
clear
did
what they
not
need.
know exactly where they were heading in both of those years.
I knew they were going to Ruiz that year.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Big Nick energy.
I did. Day of the draft. I did. I knew they
Day
were
of the
going
draft
for it.
you knew, but what I'm saying is we didn't know they were going guard in that year's draft.
Kind of
Like,
did, though, because they got rid of Warford and it was a wide open hole.
that is
so,
true.
I mean, it was kind of like they had to go guard in that draft.
Yeah, that's the Peyton Turner draft. I had no idea where they were going in that draft.
That draft was the Alabama wide receiver, Cesar Ruiz, and Zach Bond. Those are the guys going into the draft.
Yeah, I
And
remember
Ruggs,
the Bond thing.
Ruggs didn't happen, and that's where they were looking.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, for me, this feels like one that I can't really. It's like a slippery draft for me, right?
Yeah.
I just. It's like I feel like I just don't really have a good idea.
You do though. It's just because of what's going to be there. It's what
don't
can
know.
they
And that's
do?
why though.
Yeah.
That's why and I'm just like last year we knew that they had made the move to go up before the draft, right? And then we knew that wide receiver was like maybe the biggest need this team has had in years, right? Other than quarterback. Quarterback is always the biggest need. So yeah, but this one I can see them staying still or see them trading up. Like I could just see it. Like last year we knew, I just knew Olave was just going to be the pick. It just felt that way. And even some other years, like I was talking to someone at the event yesterday. I was like the Malcolm Jenkins draft.
We all knew that. We all knew
the
Sheldon
Rankins, right? We knew the Pete draft wasn't really that surprising, right? So there's some of them
The
where
Pete draft surprised me.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Pete draft didn't surprise me that much. The Peyton Turner pick, I wasn't expecting that one. The Ruiz pick, I think that one was surprising. But this year, it's just a little bit more slippery for me personally. That's
but the problem is that like you wrote the perfect part for Matt Damon, and like you just might have to cast Jesse Plemons. Like that's just my
Well, that's why
how it works out.
Yeah, but that's one way to put it. Yeah.
I mean, that's just kind of what it is. Like they need a Matt Damon, and they might not.
All right.
They might not get him.
This just popped into my head. My final question for you guys. Dream scenario for the Saints. It happens in round 1. The Clemson defensive lineman falls to you at 29. Which one do you want, Miles Murphy or Brian Brzee?
I'd probably go Murphy. I think.
I'll take either one. Like either one, I would run to the table for.
I mean, it would be Murphy for them, right? He just seems like
I know.
It just seems like if they don't move up, then they're just going to end up drafting
They could hand
Murphy.
him all of Marcus Davenport's old clothes and be like, I think they'll fit.
Oh gosh!
All right. That's all we got for you guys today. Make sure you sign up for the website. We got all your draft coverage coming for that. New website coming this week. New pod launching next week. Appreciate all the support, and we will talk to you guys soon.